I first want to start out today really in talking about the path that you get down to, should we actually have multi-project deployments? Should we be doing the DBT mesh? And so there are two things that I want to be true, or at least one thing that I want you to be committed to, and one thing that should be true before you say, hey, we should start splitting projects out. And so the first piece being analysts on your platform, right? So data analysts should be on your data platform. Why? Because data analysts have the best relationships with your business. They're the ones who broker trust between your data team's data, and they're the ones who are actually building those relationships so that your business stakeholders are able to actually take this data and actually optimize some sort of business process. And so I want to walk you through first just a quick thought experiment, right? So I've had the pleasure of being on a number of different projects and I've also been a data analyst myself as well. Think about historically, like, where has the institutional knowledge of business transformation, data transformation within your business existed historically, right? And so before DBT, this was sitting within a bunch of stored procedures. And when there are data quality issues, who calls up? Business calls up the data analyst, right? And they say, hey, this data point looks wrong, why? And the problem with that is historically you go to engineer and say, hey, this data looks wrong. You might hear back a week later kind of thing. And I've felt this personally. Like, I've been in this role. It's not fun having to field these kind of conversations. And so when I found out about DBT, like, this was the meme that, like, it described me perfectly, right? Like, we gave data analysts the tools to become engineers overnight. And so the first thing before we even get to multi-project deployments is that I want you to be committed to having analysts develop on your platform, right? This is important for you to be able to take your company's data and be able to derive value from it. But so what's the second thing that starts to happen? So I'm going to kind of walk you down a little bit of a path of, okay, we should start thinking about multi-projects. So once you've got your project together, yes, we have analysts developing on our platform. This is awesome. We start to mature things, right? We've got a foundational project within our organization. We're starting to use DBT in more advanced ways. We've solved some initial problems around how our data team interacts with the business, right, by having analysts on the platform. But now we create some new ones. And we see this in DBT Slack. We start asking things like, hey, how do I mature my developer processes? How do I add more automation and tools around our development? How do we advance CI checks and things like this? And so what we start to do is we start to do things like this. We start to say, hey, we need multiple years of experience with DBT. There are numerous examples of this. But we also start to do things like this, where we start asking for very specific stuff of, like, you must be comfortable implementing custom materialization types. And so what we start to do is we're maturing this core foundational project in our organization, but we're starting to box out the very people who are able to broker that trust between our data team's data, and the rest of the business. And so now you're scaling your DBT project. You started to do some advanced things. What are those things? You have custom loading patterns, incremental strategies, right? We're trying to solve some sort of performance bottlenecks using DBT. We've got macro overrides in place, custom pre-commit hooks, custom CI checks. The list goes on. The projects get advanced. Data analysts are no longer able to develop on our platform. And so the question I pose to you is, how do you scale your data platform using DBT such that analysts can develop on your platform with your engineers? And so with that, I'll introduce myself. I'm Tyler. I'm a senior consultant with Analytics8. We're a data and analytics consultancy. I've had the pleasure of working with this guy right here for the better half of, I think, a year and a half now, something like that. And so we're going to talk to you a little bit today about how we've done this, and we've scaled multi-project deployments. So Yannick, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Perfect. Thanks a lot.
I can handle it. Yeah, you're good.
Very good. All right, my name is Yannick. I'm head of engineering in the go-to-market domain of Roche, based in Switzerland. I will just talk about what Roche is. We are 150 engineers, analysts. Roche is probably one of the biggest pharma companies you have never heard of, or at least this is what I get when I travel to the US. Maybe you have heard of Genentech, maybe not. Genentech is part of the Roche family. They were just never willing to take the name, but it's a long story. Now, Roche, as you can see, founded in Switzerland, in Basel, and employs around 100,000 people worldwide. So it's fairly big. I think what makes Roche a special pharma company is that we have two big divisions, the pharma division, but also the diagnostics division. And most pharma companies only do pharma, and we also do diagnostics, which of course strategically can be a huge advantage, also combining data from diagnostics and pharma. I think also important, we spend of course a lot of money on R&D, is not unusual, but I think also this shapes a little bit the culture around Roche, which is very forward-looking. Luckily also I was given the opportunity in data and analytics also to move forward there. Now, go-to-market space is probably like marketing, sales, digital, like omni-channel engagement of Roche with the healthcare ecosystems, mostly with the doctors and the hospitals, right? So the space that I cover is really this go-to-market domain where we collect a lot of data and where we also need a lot of data for, can you switch to the next one? Mm-hmm. For the common demands that we have, which is mainly the new generation of doctors. They're very much used to Netflix, Spotify, everything is personalized, everything is meaningful. Now, historically, the interaction with pharma companies not that way, right? So our goal in data and analytics for go-to-market is to make those interactions more meaningful, to provide better content that is also more personalized, to help the sales force that we have also to better support the patient programs, but also the entire healthcare systems, including the doctors.
And so to give you just a sense of like the scale of what we're operating at today is, we've got a few numbers up here for you just to take a look at. So this is Data Fabric in the cloud, AWS native, 50 terabytes of data that we're managing using Redshift primarily. And this is driving over 100 data products. And these data products are being managed in a core foundational project. We'll talk about a little bit more about that in a moment. But we've got over 150 engineers and analysts developing on the platform. This is also across over 40 countries, which will be significant in terms of how this architecture has been set up. As well as the rate of change on this platform is maybe a little bit hard to wrap your mind around. 120,000 commits per month, 600 daily pipeline triggers. So this is like CI checks and stuff like that. And so first, I just want to talk us through a framework for how we think about we're scaling DBT. Should we start adding in multi-projects? And so what are some of the challenges to being able to do that? And so we really think about this in a framework of people, process, and technology. And so people being analysts, right? We have different skill sets that we want to be able to have develop on our platform, and how do we architect things so that we can have all these different folks developing with us? And technology is obviously related to that, right? How do we architect things? How do we set up developer environments so that we can have different skill sets developing? Maybe not everybody knows Git. And then finally, process. So how do we align our teams who develop a little bit differently to still be able to build in a unified way, build data products together, use data products together? And so with that, I will kick it over to Yannick to talk a little bit about the people side of things.
Yeah, and I think it's nice that we started with the people side of things and not the technology side of things, because technology process should enable the people. Now, I think what is important is how did we organize all the engineers that we have in GTM. And I think we organize the teams in the data lifecycle functionality of things. That is, what we call data engineers are the capability to only bring the data to the platform. So those folks, they're very skilled in infrastructure as a code, in JDBC, APIs, all the technical interfaces. And their only job is to bring the data. They don't necessarily need to understand the data. It's not their job, right? They need to make sure we have reliable pipelines into the platform. When the data is in the platform, of course, we have the data analysts. They're working very closely with the business to identify the business rules. So how should we implement, like what should be the business logic? How do you want to map? How do you want to group or aggregate or whatever, like all the business logic. So it's the data analysts that work closely with the business to identify what needs to be done. And then we have the analytics engineers, a separate capability. They're the ones using dbt, so they will implement these pipelines with the tests to create the backend solution for it. We have also, beyond that, capabilities like visual analytics, which is the Tableau and ThoughtSpot in the world. And then we also, as mentioned, we have machine learning projects. So MLOps is very big for us. So we have machine learning engineers. Of course, also cloud engineers that are more around the platform itself. And last but not least, DevOps, which for me is huge. It's a very important capability also to have. Now, how are the teams organized is really in this, can you go back?
Yeah, sorry.
What is really important is that how the teams are organized is it's cross-functional. So we have the capabilities, so everybody belongs to a certain capability, but of course you also belong to a product. So it's cross-functional. And why did we organize that in a matrix? It's very simple, that the products, they want to deliver things fast, right? I mean, the clients were asking, oh, we need to deliver tomorrow. But then from a platform perspective, what you want to have is reusability, standard, governance. So there's some kind of conflicting interests here. And the only way to mitigate this for us was to come up with a matrix structure, which is not perfect, but at least it kind of allows for both things, to have independence, but also to enforce some standards. So it's decoupling, but coupling, so the right balance. Is it perfect? Maybe not, but it's our best shot on how to organize this. Now, who knows Ted Lasso? All right. I mean, coming from Europe, it's always a bit difficult to do soccer analogies in the US. But if you have ever watched kids playing soccer, they're all over the place. You're a goalkeeper, you're a midfielder, you're also a striker, and you know, it's fun to watch, but it's not really efficient, right? But that's also what I see with a lot of data teams. You're the back-end guy, you're the front-end guy, you do the BA as well, so it's really, you cover all the roles. It's really like kids soccer. And to come back to the matrix that we had before, in professional soccer, what you have is you have the positions. You have defender, wings, striker, goalkeeper, right? And that correlates pretty much with what we had in the matrix. So you have your capability, you have your speciality. And I think if you have your speciality, you can not only be faster, but you can also deliver better quality. At the beginning, of course, to change that was a bit difficult because as kids also enjoy to be everywhere and everything, I think we also have to adopt to a different style of working. But now, I think with this setup that we have, really it improved a lot the quality and the speed. So we just became more professional as data teams by having really clearer roles and responsibilities. All right, process, my second or even more favorite topic. I'm a huge fan of DevOps, and I know DevOps is a bit of a hype term, but for me, DevOps is also what is defining our ways of working as engineers. Now, we changed to DevOps, and it's funny, when I first started off that program 4 years ago, I was telling people we are going to do DevOps. And everybody was nodding, was like, oh, okay, cool. Maybe 1 year later, the first came back and said, well, when are you going to hand over to operations team? And then I realized, okay, I think they have not really understood the very fundamental thing of DevOps. DevOps means the teams that are developing stuff, they're also operating stuff. And that's the essence of it. But that's very difficult for people to understand when they're coming from a world where development and operations were two different things. So it took me a lot to establish even this basic understanding of what DevOps is. But of course, if you think of it, it changes also fundamentally how you develop stuff. Because if you know that you also need to operate this, maybe you put in a little bit more thought. Because you know you're going to be responsible if this breaks. Documentation, well, maybe you start to write documentation because half year in, you don't remember what you exactly did. So it's not for somebody else, it's for you to remember. So I think by just having this principle of DevOps, again, it improves the quality of what we are doing. Also, I needed a lot to coach and teach about what is Agile and what is Sprint. I think there's also big conception. It's the same thing. We started with Agile and sprints, and first sprint, after 2 days, business is coming back. Oh, but we need to change the sprint goals. And I was like, no, this is not how it works. And then answer was, well, but you said you're Agile. So also people don't understand what Agile really is. It is something that you need to be very disciplined. Disciplined for 2 weeks, right? And then after 2 weeks, you can change again. But in those 2 weeks, you're going to focus on what you decided on the sprint planning. So it's not a free pass and we can do whatever we want. No, Agile actually requires a lot of discipline. And this is also a big misconception. So DevOps, Agile, sprints, I think very important. Very important also to have very strong standards and governance around the development process itself. And also we're having a unified project management. So we do everything in GitLab. All the issues, all the sprints are there. It's a monorepo, so it's fully transparent. And transparency is yet another big topic for me. It's very important to try to create transparency. Now, transparency is tricky because, of course, you always want to have transparency, but you never want to give transparency, right? So it's a big topic also of trust, teams trusting each other to create this transparency. And last and not least, the bullet point here that is very close to my heart is a lot of people always focus on user experience. We need to have a great user experience. I would argue we need to have a great developer experience. Why? If the developer is not happy, your product is going to be really shitty. It's very simple. So if you really have a good developer experience, it also translates in good products. So the most important message here maybe, make your developers happy, try to work with them to optimize for their workflow and not only for the workflow from the business.
Lovely. And so I know everybody's favorite thing is to talk technology, so we're definitely going to get that. This is going to be a little bit rapid fire. There are quite a few slides that I want to get through here, but I promise you will actually walk away with an understanding of what the architecture actually looks like, what the environment looks like today. The first piece of this, call it a principle maybe, what are some of the advantages of a federated architecture? So currently today, what we're doing, and I'll touch on this in a moment, but we have a core foundational project, right? And then we have all these different affiliate countries where there are actual analysts that are tied to each of these countries that are actually building reports, helping sales folks understand and optimize some sort of business process, understand what kind of things are going on currently during the sales cycle within each country. Project Federation, though, supports different workflows and code ownership. So the thing to understand here is that when you have multiple projects, you can support different kinds of, I guess, skill sets, basically, right? So for us, we have this core engineering team, and then we also have these affiliate analysts. And so being able to have different projects set up for each of these different skill sets allows us to somewhat, we'll say, decouple things, but also allow for more speed of delivery, so that all these analyst teams are able to actually take downstream global data products and actually build quickly without trying to wait for some engineer upstream to build something. And so the other piece of this is that this allows us to scale horizontally. So we've got a country where we have a project for each country. This allows us to take global data that's enterprise modeled and spread it throughout the globe. Ultimately, the last piece of this being collaboration. So we have monorepo set up. This is where all of these affiliate projects, so a project per country, sit. But we are sharing things like CI checks across all of these projects. We are sharing, DevOps principles, stuff like that. And so this also allows us to centralize visibility across all the different models that are actually being built within that repo. Code ownership, we can kind of set up a hierarchy, and so we'll get into some of that. The next thing to understand about this environment, so like I said, we have this core foundational project. What actually happens inside of here? So we have enterprise data modeling. This is the data vault. The data vault culminates into what are actual data products. And so this is that actual interface where we have this foundational project, we've got data products coming from this project, and we're filtering all of these things downstream to all these affiliate projects where they're actually actioning and taking this data to do something with it. A couple other pieces to this is that we're supporting some machine learning, so recommendation systems, as well as some embedded applications, some web portals with this foundational project. The thing to understand here is that through this core project, there's a little bit more, call it engineering stringency. It's a little more challenging to develop on this platform. We're using DBT Core in a lot of instances to develop locally. It's not as easy for analysts to onboard and be developers within this project. There's a lot more knowledge and skill sets to be able to do this. And so on the affiliate side, we're taking data products downstream, and this is where a lot of the reporting is happening for these affiliate analysts. To understand what the monorepo for analysts looks like today. So again, this started out before any of the product announcements that we've seen at Coalesce this past week around DBT mesh features, multi-project features. So this is all stuff that kind of preceded that. The thing to understand here is that each country gets their own project, their own space to develop, but we also have a hierarchy in place here. So like Yannick was talking about with this matrix organization, on the left side there you saw that there are different regions, right? And so we have some engineering talent that sits over some of these countries, so specifically like myself over APAC, basically giving some code ownership, helping establish best practices within each of these countries, while still letting analysts build and build fast and have their own environment to do so. The other piece of this is common models. So we're actually, for the data products that are coming from this foundational project, we've got views that are actually defined in this common folder, and these views are imported into each country project that sits below it. And so the thinking here is that these data products get filtered down for each one of these countries specifically, and they're able to take all of these data products and actually build based on this data that's specific to their country. Helps with just like data security, row level security stuff as well there too. To give you a sense of what actual database setups look like for this, so each project is materializing in its own database, whereas the core foundational project is onboarding sources, right? It's actually creating these data products within this integrated database, and then each of these countries is where these projects will pick up and take these data products downstream and actually have their own database to develop within. The other piece here at the top you can kind of see with country-specific sources is that some countries have just one-off source systems that we utilize engineering talent to onboard, but it's something that we can still pull into these affiliate country databases themselves through the projects too. We are doing this with DBT Cloud today because it allows analysts to onboard easily. It gives them a great environment to be able to develop. They don't have to do any local setup. We can kind of just hand them the tools and off they go. And so the way to understand this is that we've got 2 monorepos. We've really done this to kind of split up the skill sets, right? We have custom things in place. We have CI checks, the single DBT project that is this global core foundational project can be challenging to work on. There are macro overrides in place. There are some nuances how the project works. And so being able to split this, being able to allow analysts to work in their own repository, still with some engineering oversight, really helps with just speed of delivery, not getting caught down by, hey, I have this weird error message and I don't understand what's going on. And so, yeah, a bit of a summary here of just how we've thought about things. And a bit of a throwaway slide here, but if you've ever wondered why there's this project subdirectory when you're creating a DBT cloud project, now you know. We have a monorepo with tons of projects within it. And so the way to really think about this is that we've taken this core foundational project and we've really spread it throughout the globe. We've been able to take these data products that are well-defined. They have well-defined interfaces. There are owners, right? We have some stewardship happening. And we've been able to take this and spread these products throughout the globe, make them usable across the world. And so what's next? We've heard a lot about DBT Mesh. This is something that we're looking forward to, and we'll absolutely be looking at how we're going to implement this into our workflows going forward, as well as the Cloud CLI. So currently we do have a bunch of engineers on the core foundational side doing their own development in DBT Core. But the Cloud CLI changes that for us. And so it's definitely something that we're interested in POCing as well. Interoperability between core and cloud, right? So some things are running outside of cloud today, but being able to push all that information of what actually happened. This is getting into things like model granularity and what has happened recently outside of DBT Cloud. Being able to push all that metadata still into DBT Cloud is something that we're interested in as well. And similarly, just thinking about DBT Cloud as this metadata tool that tells you what the state of your data warehouse is, and being able to operate on all of that information, whether it be through an orchestrator on top of it or something like that. Key takeaways. Created high-quality data products, spread them throughout the globe, using DBT Cloud to scale, using analysts, getting analysts onto the platform, and ultimately reducing time to market, right? We were able to shorten that development time by getting more folks onto the platform. We can deliver faster and make it easier to add more folks into the future. Final thing, core, cloud, not mutually exclusive for us. This may change into the future, and that's why we're excited for a lot of the product announcements that have come at this year's Coalesce. So, yeah, with that, I think we'll... So questions? I think we have time for questions. A couple minutes, maybe.
I need to proceed. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. So what are the challenges you faced while training your analysts with DBT Cloud in different countries?
You can go first.
Yeah. So I would say, honestly, a lot of it is just getting them to see the development workflow, understanding, okay, this is how we're actually getting data products in, and just understanding that lineage, right? But honestly, once you get people up and going, you kind of walk them through their first issue, people start to kind of get it, I guess, as things start to click for them. So in all honesty, like this hierarchy that I was talking about, where we have some engineering talent that sits over these different countries, having those resources available to be able to help people through different problems is something that's been really, really valuable, and something that I've enjoyed. I like to mentor, so it's something that I like. To be honest with you, I don't know if we faced like any big sticking points. DBT Cloud is really easy to onboard into. That's why we love it, right? And there's a lot of good content out there for understanding how it works and being able to enable yourself. There's certification that exists, right? So yeah, I don't know if you got anything to add, but.
No, I would say that it's also important. We bought a lot of seats for the DBT certifications. I think this is a great initiative. where, we also have study groups now, and I think, people are willing to get upskilled if you give them the opportunity, right? So I think that's one aspect. Maybe to extend the question a little bit, I think the challenge is not so much to onboard people. The challenge that I see, and we're not there yet, and I wish we could be there, is how do we provide the same dev workflow for the analysts and for the more mature engineers that we have, right? DBT Cloud is still lacking some of the aspects. I was talking to the product team in the recent days. Like we're, for example, a big fan of pre-commit. It's not possible in DBT Cloud, right? So hopefully there is more development happening that in the future, this two development path can be more harmonized. So I personally see this is the biggest challenge, right? How can you make it easy but standardized so it's good for both worlds?
I don't know where the...
You need to press or shift it up.
Hello. Thank
There
you.
you
I had two questions. The first was, did y'all transition from DBT Core to cloud? I think I missed that. And then the second question was, I've asked this in a couple of talks now, in that like, was this a top-down initiative that kind of, what you guys, Roche went through this transformation? Was it a bottom-up? Was it declarative from like the CTO? Because this seems like a pretty big overhaul to change like dev culture in general, like create a DevOps group and develop all that. Thank you.
I'll let you take that. I think those both up your alley. Core and cloud, first one.
Core and cloud, first one. No, it's still pretty much divided. I would say 40-ish developers on cloud and 40-ish still on core. I couldn't convince my senior engineers to go to DBT Cloud.
What was the reason for that? What limitations did cloud have that prevented that?
I mean, they're very much tied to their Visual Studio Code and all the cool stuff they want to have. So for them, it was, they looked at it, they were like, yeah, it's nice, but it's not for us, which I kind of could understand. I mean, that's also the reason why DBT came out with the CLI, right? I think they recognize that there is also a different group that we need to cater for. So that's why maybe in 1 year's time, you can ask me the same question again, and then can I say, well, maybe everybody shifted to cloud now because we have the CLI. But currently, it was not possible yet. Secondly, is a bottom-up initiative. Maybe that's also the reason why it's successful, I don't know. And it took me a lot of convincing. It took me a lot of going to the people, talking to the people, explaining them, so it's not that I have authority over the regions. I kind of needed to convince the countries to be onboarded onto the platform, to shift from their Hadoop cluster that they had to the new setup. So it is a cloud transformation that we achieved in the last 3-4 years, but very much from a bottom-up effort of convincing the engineers that this is the right thing to do.
I think the only thing I'll add to that is just like build it and they will come. That seems to be something that resonates with me these days. So anyways, you should get some sponsorship though. Don't just go off and start building something.
No, I mean, I have to say there is a sponsorship there. Like, I mean,
Right.
Of course, my line management, they saw that this is successful, and it got more momentum also because there was a top-down support. So I think only bottom-up will also not work. You need to make that touch point happen, right? That you get the bottom-up base right, but also the top-down support eventually because you need that. Yes.
How do you define best practices and standards, and how do you make sure they're followed?
That's also a very good one, because very early in the project, I was, and that was probably 1.5 or 2 years ago, I said, we need to add SQL Fluff to pre-commit. By that time, SQL Fluff was not so mature yet, and it upset a lot of people, so I was like, okay, maybe we wait. I haven't dared to go back there yet, because if you upset people once, it's very difficult to reintroduce something, right? But the question is very valid. It's like how to find the right balance of what should be the minimum standard that you have, right? And I think this is important that you as a community can come together and decide that. So one of the things that I'm also extremely proud of is that what we have is really like an amazing data and analytics community within go-to-market. Like our Slack channel is amazing. And that's why also those standard and governance topics, it's not that I decide on that. Well, by far not. It's really also these standards, they should emerge from the community, more from a bottom-up mentality as well.
I don't know if you want me to start running the.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're talking about data mesh, and my questions were about how and why you choose to go with the monorepository, since we have also different teams that I like to get to like S2 of the merge request and that everything just in one single place. And why don't you, for example, you just so if you're really packaging server, you can just not package from another GitHub.
It's a good question. The question was, why monorepo? Short answer is, Google is doing it, so we should also do it.
That's how I think too, yeah.
No, okay. Sorry? Yeah, no, I mean, it was a joke. I think it's a philosophical question. But for me, again, the monorepo is not only a technical aspect. It's about transparency, and it's about creating trust. Now, if you have multi-repo, it's very difficult to create transparency and trust, in my opinion. I don't want to go and check 20 repos of what is happening. I don't want to, go and have that for other people as well. So for me, monorepo, and we had a lot of discussion internally. Ultimately, I think it was a very good decision, and I would do it again. It is, however, challenging because you need to have the maturity to pull it off. And
The release process, when you want to deploy something.
we were, again, very strict on the data, on the standards and governance. We said, look, we are one program. We have 2 weekly release cycles. 2 weekly should be good enough for everybody. Of course, we have hot fixes and everything, but I have not seen a business request where 2 weeks is not good enough. I mean, it's far more commercial. I mean, so that's why we were, in that regards, quite strict, because you need to find some alignment.
Hey, thanks for presenting. My question was around, I guess, packages. You use the Data Vault, and I'm wondering if you use DBT Vault, the package, or if you built something in-house, and what the shortcomings were of DBT Vault if you don't use it.
It's a very good question, and when he started, we wanted to use it, but there's no Redshift connector. So that was a bummer. We built something in-house, templating framework around the Data Vault. And I mean, Data Vault itself I think I could have had a talk about Data Vault itself and the pros and the cons and why you should consider it or not consider it. All I can say, it is complex, even if you have good people that understand what they're doing. Especially, it's also about the performance of the models itself and how fast you can generate the insights, what ultimately matters for the business. So there is still a lot we need to invest currently in our Data Vault setup, because I always push the guys because it's taking too long, and because it is complex. I mean, our Data Vault, if you would separate out the Data Vault projects, is 6,000 models.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so you have the monorepo, and I think I heard you said you have some folks using core versus cloud.
Correct.
So how do you orchestrate? Do you not use DBT Cloud for orchestration, or do you also orchestrate the core stuff there as well?
So the overall orchestration, we use, we are an AWS shop. So of course we're using AWS managed Airflow for all the orchestration. And by orchestration, I really mean We orchestrate our glue job, our Airflow jobs, and then our DBT stuff, and then we trigger also our machine learning pipelines in Airflow, right? So we use Airflow for end-to-end orchestration.
Something to add too, jobs are running in the cloud. It's triggered by API, but we also have a very cool framework for actually storing like jobs as code too. Just because we have so many affiliate projects that being able to store jobs as code actually makes it really easy to refactor as opposed to having to click in a UI. And so that's one of the principles we actually didn't talk about was everything as code. Probably could have a whole another 5 minutes of a talk on that, but anyways.
Yeah, so if you want to deploy like a DBT cloud job, you're not doing that in the UI. You're adding some YAML lines, and then the framework is the CI/CD is taking care of deploying that to DBT cloud.
Thanks.
Hey. So you mentioned that you're using pre-commit check framework to validate your projects. What metrics you paying attention to, and how you actually handling the pre-commit checks if you work with both core and cloud? Does it actually affect the DBT cloud repositories? Well, the projects in monorepository.
Well, it should affect them more. But I think when it comes to pre-commit, it's really about shifting stuff left that you cannot even commit if it's not compliant. Now, with DBT Cloud, you only realize when you do the PR or the merge request that something is not correct, because only there you can implement the pre-commit, right? So we try to keep it as lightweight as possible for the CI/CD on the affiliate side. We have a higher maturity on the core side. Again, also because we have pre-commit there very early on already, and the maturity of the engineers is also a little bit higher. But again, my ultimate goal is to bring all this together, to raise also the maturity, to have more pre-commits also on the DBT Cloud side eventually. So I think there's so many amazing pre-commit hooks out there. I want to have them all. But I also realize that you need to do two things. One thing is to slowly increase the bar on the pre-commit, but at the same time also educate the developers, because you don't want to piss them off, right? I mean, you need to make them understand why something is not good, not just to tell them this is not good. And I think that's why upskilling and teaching is a very important aspect also of raising the bar together.
Did you have any issues governing the pre-commit configuration from the developers? Like they could just comment configuration and the pre-commit will not work. I mean, they could alter the configuration file.
So this is still running in like CI and GitLab though, right? So we have checks that are there. So it would get caught at that point, but ideally it's happening locally. So
locally you can always cheat,
right,
course.
Of course.
Hello.
There you go.
How do you make sure that table structure is aligned across regions? What level of freedom does regions have? Is there a case, for example, for orders table to be different in EMA or APAC or something like this?
Is the question just like about country to country? Like how do you keep things, I guess, like similar, aligned?
Yeah, so I imagine you have cases to have some global analytics and to kind of like gather data from regions and somehow align them and have like, this is global results, this is region results.
So I don't know if this will answer your question, but so we have global data products. That data is getting filtered down to each of these different countries, right? So they're only working with data that's specific to that country. We do have some, call them standards in place. I wouldn't say there's anything that necessarily compels people to adhere to them, but we're still using kind of a staging core MART type layer within these affiliate projects, because some affiliate projects do take their own sources, like I said, and so they do have like their own staging layer as well. But ultimately the idea is that they're taking data from these global data products, filtering it down to that specific country. And so ultimately the point of it is that we do want to let analysts have their own space to work, right? But the point being that we do have some engineering leadership over the top to help ensure that, you know, the project should be structured in a nice way, and shouldn't just be an absolute mess. I don't know if that answered your question.
And maybe just to add, I think the follow-up question would be, how do you achieve the right balance between where to implement business rules and how? So I think for the global products that we build, we try to implement the business rules that should be there. Of course, then, if Germany wants to have their own business rules on top of that, they can do that in their database. And I think that is the challenging part, is to what are those common business rules? That's why we invested heavily. I mean, those source data products, that's by far the biggest project. A lot of analysts, business analysts have been involved there to come up with that standard layer that should be good enough for everybody. But that's the tricky part. It's the right balance, to push down the business logic to a lower level, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? But then, of course, you need the flexibility, because in your country there might be something that is on top of that. And that's the tricky part, I would say.
Thank you.
We'll wrap up there, I think. But thank you, yeah.
Thank you.